Federal sources and prison insiders have raised new questions about a series of unusual developments surrounding Ghislaine Maxwell, the convicted accomplice of Jeffrey Epstein. The events point to a potential intersection of political influence, fear, and secrecy, reaching the highest levels of power. Maxwell, once a key associate of Epstein, was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for trafficking minors to wealthy and powerful clients. After Epstein's death in custody under still disputed circumstances, many expected the case to end, but it did not. Just months after sentencing, Maxwell was quietly moved from a medium-security prison in Florida to a minimum-security federal camp in Bryan, Texas, a transfer that defied standard Bureau of Prisons protocols. Sex offenders almost never receive such reclassification, yet she did. Records and witness accounts indicate that, weeks before that transfer, Maxwell met privately with Todd Blanche, a former personal attorney to Donald Trump, who now holds a senior role within the Department of Justice. The meeting was not public, not documented by court record, and not disclosed to the press. Soon after that encounter, Maxwell's living conditions changed dramatically. Harsh confinement was replaced with dorm-style quarters, access to better food, yoga sessions, and proximity to other high-profile inmates such as Elizabeth Holmes. Officials inside the Bureau of Prisons reported that the shift occurred almost overnight, bypassing months of routine paperwork. Multiple prison employees say they received direct orders from Washington. Guards were told not to discuss Maxwell's case, and inmates were warned not to mention her name. Artificial intelligence monitoring now flags any communication referencing her. One prisoner who shared minor details with a journalist was abruptly transferred to a maximum security facility. A guard later told reporters, "It's like she's a VIP guest, not a prisoner. Orders come directly from DC." Sources confirm that Maxwell receives private deliveries, restricted visits, and customized privileges never granted to others. Even her public safety factor, the rule that normally blocks sex offenders from minimum security placement, was waived. Former federal wardens have described the decision as unprecedented. The question remains what happened during that meeting between Maxwell and Trump's former lawyer. Whistleblowers allege that Maxwell referenced names from Trump's own cabinet when discussing Epstein's network. Blanche reportedly ended the conversation abruptly. There were no follow-up questions, no denials, only silence. When Trump was later asked about Maxwell's denied appeal, he responded, "I'd have to take a look at it. I'll speak to the DOJ." He again insisted he barely knew her, despite earlier describing her as a terrific person. Observers note that this pattern, deny, distract, but never fully disconnect, mirrors his behavior in other controversies. Trump's influence inside the justice system continues through longtime allies. Todd Blanche's position gives him proximity to sensitive decisions. The Bureau of Prisons' approval of Maxwell's privileged transfer appears less about rehabilitation and more about control. Control over what she might reveal. Timing is crucial. Congress is preparing to vote on the public release of the full Epstein files, documents said to include names, communications, flight logs, and photographs long sealed under claims of national security. Lawmakers from both parties have pushed for transparency. Trump cannot block the vote, but his circle can attempt containment, keeping Maxwell quiet and limiting leaks. Yet, leaks are already spreading. A prison consultant who has worked with Trump allies described the Maxwell operation as the most secretive he has ever witnessed. "They're running a full blackout," he said. "Anyone who talks disappears." At the Bryan facility, surveillance cameras have been repositioned and staff rotated weekly. Officials describe the environment as protective custody in reverse, not to shield her but to monitor every move. One employee remarked, "It feels like we're guarding a state secret, not an inmate." That perception may not be far from the truth. Maxwell possesses information capable of shaking institutions in Washington, London, and Wall Street. Epstein's network operated on leverage, exploiting human lives to secure influence. Maxwell knows who flew where, who paid what, and who benefited. For Trump's team, that knowledge is dangerous. They fear she might talk. She holds evidence. She understands her survival depends on remaining valuable. Her comfort behind bars is a message. Cooperation earns privilege. Exposure invites ruin. The former president has followed the same pattern before. He rewarded allies such as Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, and Michael Flynn with pardons for their silence. When Trump once said of Maxwell, "I wish her well," analysts interpreted it not as kindness, but as a signal, stay quiet, and protection will follow. That dynamic reveals the deeper structure, silence exchanged for privilege, loyalty for safety. Beneath it lies a network of loyalists embedded throughout the Justice Department, the courts, and the prison system, individuals positioned to insulate Trump and themselves from fallout. Their motivation is not only loyalty, but also self-preservation. If he falls, they fall with him. Inside the White House, officials have scrambled to manage the growing narrative. Press officers deflect questions. Spokespeople issue brief, non-committal statements. Privately, aides insist the president is uninvolved, but the anxiety is visible. Members of Congress are now demanding full transparency. Independent reporters and victims' advocates are preparing new lawsuits. Momentum is building toward disclosure of the Epstein files, which could expose years of coordinated protection for the powerful. The broader story is no longer just about Maxwell or Trump. It reflects how systems of justice can be bent by influence, how victims are silenced, and how institutions designed for accountability can be used to preserve power. Ghislaine Maxwell remains in federal custody, but under conditions many describe as lenient and privileged. She has become a symbol of unequal justice. The powerful shielded the powerless, waiting for closure. And while official denials continue, insiders say the situation cannot remain hidden forever. Secrets this large have a history of surfacing. The more pressure builds around the Epstein files, the closer the public comes to learning what truly happened and who still has something to lose.